In this lesson, I'm going to teach you the pronunciation of 15 words that learners very often get wrong. This lesson is especially useful if you are a beginner, a pre-intermediate, or an intermediate student of English. But even if you are upper intermediate or advanced, you should check the words in this lesson to make sure that you know how to say them. As usual in these lessons, we're going to practice these words on their own first, and I'm going to give you lots of tips and tricks so that you can say them correctly. Then we're going to put them into sentences, because it's one thing to practice a single word and a completely different one to put it into a longer sentence. And finally, we'll put all of these words in a story so that you can practice them even more. So without further ado, let's take care of our first word. Now this is one of the most complicated words, even though it's basic. Lots of students get that wrong. And the reason for this is the pronunciation of the ending of this word. Well, actually there are two reasons, but let me get to the first one first. So in English, when you've got a T-U-R-E ending in a word where this ending is not stressed, it means we don't put any emphasis on it. That's like 99% of words in English that end in T-U-R-E. We pronounce this ending in a very similar way to the word chair. The only difference is that the chair at the end of temperature is a little bit shorter. Temperature, chair, chair, temperature. Of course, if you want to, you can pronounce the letter R in that ending and say chair. That's absolutely fine. Because my accent is British, I don't actually pronounce the letter R in an ending like this, and I say chair. But for you, there's absolutely no problem if your objective is to speak nice international English to pronounce the letter R. I'm actually in the 2% of native speakers who don't pronounce the letter R in a situation like this. So, temperature. Now, the other problem with that word that I've mentioned is the pronunciation of the letter A just in front of the T-U-R-E ending. Pay close attention as I say this word to how this letter A sounds like. Temperature. Temperature. So what can you hear? How is the letter A pronounced here just before that T-U-R-E? It's a very, very short sound, which is similar to something between an E and an E, okay? But it's not an A. Lots of students are having problems with this word because they say tempra. But it's not tempra, it's tempre, tempre, temperature, temperature. Let's move on to our next word. And this one is especially complicated because students don't know where to put the stress. There are 3 syllables in this word. Where would you put the stress? Well, listen and check. Engineer. Engineer. What's the part of the word that's stressed? Engineer. It's the ending, isn't it? N-double-E-R sounds exactly in the same way as the word near. Near. This is what you need to say at the end of engineer, and put a lot of emphasis on it, okay? Next word. How would you pronounce it? A lot of students here are having problems with the letter E in the first syllable. They don't really know whether it's an E or something else. Well, listen. Nephew. Nephew. Stress on the first syllable and a normal short E, as in pet or get. Nephew. Okay, and if there is nephew, there also needs to be a... How would you say this word? Niece. A long E here. Niece. Quite a difficult word to say correctly when you look at the spelling, but the pronunciation is actually quite easy. It's just a long E in the middle. Niece. Okay, what about the next word? How would you say it? This is a tricky word because a lot of students think that each letter here needs to be pronounced separately, and they say APP. The problem with that is that if you say APP to a native speaker, they'll have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. My Spanish students, for example, all say APP because this is how you pronounce this word in Spanish. But in English, you pronounce it as just one syllable, and it is app. App. The vowel at the beginning of this word is the same sound that we have in the word cat or bat. It's an a sound. It's a sound which is quite difficult to make for a lot of learners of English because it doesn't exist in their mother tongue. And we make it kind of at the back of our mouth, and it's a sound which is between a and e. A. Cat, bat, app. You need to practice this a little bit. Right, let's have a look at another short word. How would you say it? Lots of students are mispronouncing this word because they are pronouncing the letters the way they see them. But as you know, this doesn't really work in English because there is almost no correspondence between spelling and sounds, especially when it comes to vowels. So, how would you say it? Key. Key, with a nice long E. Remember, it's not K like the letter K in the English alphabet. This is key with a nice long E. Do you remember the other word that had a nice long E inside today? Niece. Key, the same long E. Let's move on and have a look at a longer word now. How would you say it? The problem here is not so much the sounds, but the stress again. So if you remember, in engineer, we were putting the stress on the last syllable of that word. And here, where would you put the stress? Lots of students can't really decide and are having problems here, but the stress here is on the first syllable. Listen. Interested. Interested. Are you interested in learning more pronunciation today? Well, that's good because we're moving on to our next word. How would you say it? Again, it's a problem word for a lot of students. If you're French, for example, you have two big difficulties here. The first one is the H at the beginning, and in English, you have to pronounce the letter H at the beginning. It's true that we have some exceptions, like our or honest, but in here, and in the majority of words in English that start with the letter H, we pronounce this H. So we're going to start this word by saying h. And then we have a problem with the U, G, and E. How do you say this? Well, we start with the U sound, just like you and me. Hue. And we're going to finish this with J. Huge. The same sound that's at the beginning of the word gym. The problem a lot of students have with this word is that they say hug or hug or something like that. But nobody will understand you if you say it this way. You need to say huge. If you're one of the people having problems with the pronunciation of this word, fixing it will be a huge improvement to your pronunciation. Now let's have a look at another word. How would you say it? Now the question here is how we pronounce the letter CH inside. CH can be pronounced in a lot of different ways in English, 6 if I'm not mistaken, and in here we pronounce it as sh, exactly in the same way as you would tell somebody to be quiet. Shh. Machine. Machine. So, A couple of things to remember here. The CH is pronounced as a sh, and the first syllable is not stressed. It's very, very short. Machine, machine. Can you hear how much emphasis there is on the second syllable here? There is a long E in there too. Machine, machine. Okay, and now let's move on to quite a complicated word for students to say. It's a very basic one, but because of the spelling, when you look at it, it's like, oh my goodness, what's that? It's quite hard to pronounce correctly. But listen, through, through. Is it really so difficult to say? If you just close your eyes, forget completely about the spelling. Through. Is it very complicated for you to say? Well, I hope not, because it's really just three sounds. Th, r, and a long u. Through. So forget about the spelling here. Pay attention to the sound. Through. Well, I hope it's easier now and you won't have any more doubts or questions about how to say this word in the future. Hang on, did you just hear how I said this word? Listen again. Question. What can you hear at the end here? How are the letters T-I-O-N pronounced? Listen again. Question. Question. What can you hear at the end? It's chin, right? Exactly in the same way as this part of my face. Well, in your face too. Chin, chin, question. This is really, really difficult, but you have to forget about pronouncing the O in that ending. That O is completely silent. It's just chin. And then just before that chin, there is the S sound. S, chin, S, chin. Quite difficult to say. Chin. Question. Question. This pronunciation of T-I-O-N in English is not very common, but it happens in any word where the letter S is just before T-I-O-N. So, for example, question or suggestion. Now we have three more words to do today, and they all happen to be verbs. Past verbs. One irregular and two regular verbs. Let's deal with the irregular one first. How would you say it? Lots of students are going to pronounce it incorrectly, even advanced ones, and they're going to say so. But please remember, when you say so in English, you actually say this so, or this so, or this so, but not this one. This one is pronounced with a long O at the end. Saw. So yesterday I saw a movie, and it was so good that I'm going to see it again. Saw, so. Can you see the difference? Pay attention to how my lips look when I say or, saw, and oh, so. So in saw, our lips make just one vowel sound, a long O, saw. In so, we're making a vowel sound that's two sounds together, O and U. Oh, so, saw, so. This is a really complicated area of pronunciation for a lot of learners of English, but in general in English, you can be quite sure that when you have a word that finishes with AW, you need to pronounce this word with a long O. So remember, O, not O. Saw. Okay, let's have a look at the two other verbs in the past. Worked and walked. Did my pronunciation of them surprise you in any way? Well, first of all, the most important thing when it comes to these regular verbs is not to add any extra syllables with the ed ending. Pay attention that work is one syllable, and when we put it in the past, worked is also only one syllable long. The same happens to walk. One syllable, and in the past, walked, also one syllable. Another challenge here is pronouncing the verbs themselves. So for example, work is pronounced as were at the beginning. Were, exactly like the past plural form of to be. We were there yesterday. Were. Work. Again, you can say the R if you like and say work. No problems here. And then we've got walk. And in walk, we say a long O. We forget about the L because it's silent and just connect the three sounds. Walk. Walk without the L. So in the past, worked, walked. Even though it may be very hard for you to say kt at the end, you need to try, because if you add an extra syllable, you will completely change the meaning and you will confuse your listeners. So, worked, walked. Well done. Now let's see how many of these words you can now remember to say correctly. I'm going to show you each of them first, give you a couple of seconds to think about how to say them, and then you can listen and check whether you were correct. Ready? Let's go. Temperature. Engineer. Nephew. Niece. App. Key. Interested. Huge. Machine. Through. Question. Saw. Worked. Walked. Oh, hang on a minute. I told you we were going to study 15 words, but we've only studied 14. Do you know what? There's an irregular verb I've forgotten about. Let's have a look at it. How would you say it? Well, this is a complicated one, isn't it? Because there is the O-U-G-H-T at the end, and when you look at it for the first time, it's like a catastrophe. How the hell do I say this? But similarly to through, we're going to close our eyes and just listen to how it's pronounced. Listen. Brought. Brought. Is it so complicated to repeat? I hope not. You basically need to pronounce the O-U-G-H-T inside this verb as ought, just two sounds. A long O and a T. Brought. This is a rule that you can apply to any irregular verb in English that finishes in O-U-G-H-T. Ought. Brought. And this completes our list. Now we definitely have 15 words that we have studied, and we're going to put them into sentences now. So, I'm going to show you the sentence first, give you a few seconds to think about how to say it, then I'll read it out, and you will have some time to repeat after me. Ready? Let's go! The engineer saw the temperature stopped increasing. The huge machine worked silently. My nephew brought a lot of questions to the meeting. My niece and I like walking through the park. The engineer asked if I was interested in her app. We are working on answering some key questions. Well done! Now, before we move on to the final part of this lesson, I wanted to let you know that if you'd really like to improve your pronunciation, you should consider joining my online learning community, Your English Upgrade. Your English Upgrade is a wonderful place if you want to improve your pronunciation and other skills, and join me learning English on one of the 2 weekly webinars that are available to any member of the community. When you become a member of Your English Upgrade, you immediately gain access to pronunciation hacks, a full pronunciation hacks course that I've designed that will help you sound better and more confident in English, and, of course, you can download all the PDFs and audio practice files that go with this video and any other video that I post on YouTube. The link to the community is in the description. I'll see you there. And now, let's jump back to our words and practice them in a story. Put your headphones on, relax, and try to read the text with me. After every sentence, I'm going to give you a few moments to focus on the words that were giving you most problems. Ready to start? Let's go. I work as an engineer at a big power plant. The other day, my niece and nephew visited me to see what my job was like. I brought them into the control room where we monitor the temperature and other key systems. They were very interested in everything and had a lot of questions. I showed them how everything worked on an app we use. And after that, we walked through the plant. The best moment of the trip was when they saw the huge machines up close. Both of them were amazed, and for me, having them there was a great break in my working day. Well done! I hope this practice was useful for you, and if you still have more energy to study pronunciation today, I'd definitely check out one of these two videos. You're going to find them equally as useful, or maybe even more. I'll see you there.